because she hated the sound of her own voice. So I would record her, and then she'd be doing something, and I would slide it into a hidden spot and turn it on, and she'd hear her. So, oh, what are you doing? I hate the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, well, there we go for that. Welcome
good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Howdy.
Good night. Welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Jason. That was Mitch.
That was Mitch's mom.
That was Mitch's
my mom.
and his mom.
I love you, Mom.
And we're also here with the very stoic and knowledgeable Jonathan Payne.
Who's that?
Well, apparently there's more than one of you now to the exact name, and that was creepy.
I know,
but was funny because I had somebody reach out and say, "Hey, can you guys handle this?" And I was like, "Man, I ain't heard from her in a while," and I was very pleased to see how she's doing and everything. And then I said, "John, you want to check this out?" And he's like, "You need to look. Here's the owner of the company. This is going to be awkward." And it's the same dude.
His name is John Payne.
Wow.
It's Jonathan Payne.
So it's a match made in heaven.
Yes, it is. It was meant to be.
It was just funny. It was just hilarious. So we had one of those moments yesterday, and after that, I was like, all right, that's the end of the day for me because I'm broke now. But yeah, so we are back, 2022. And so new year, new brand. That's sort of usually what happens at the beginning of a new year. Everybody kind of pokes their head up after the holidays and it's kind of like, oh, okay, some stuff happened. Some people bought some stuff. Now people are returning a bunch of crap. Maybe we should change our name and kind of refresh or, whatever. Because sometimes the change, rebranding is not about change. There's always what is it? A prefix, RE hyphen, and then apply after that, whatever, brand, website, design, there's always a something. Renew, yeah. And so, but sometimes it's just a sharpening, the edges are sharp and you just need to polish them. And then sometimes that's what needs to happen. So in this episode, we're going to talk about some of those that did that back in 2021. What were you going to say, John?
I was going to say that I feel like everybody tries to get the rebrand done in the previous year, but then it gets to be like October, November, and it's not done yet. And then they're like, well, we're not going to release it during the holidays.
Right.
Because nobody's going to pay attention.
Yeah.
So then they all come out in January.
Yeah. It's going to be, it'll be interesting to see who did that, how that went. But when I put this episode together, I was, some we know we've talked about. And John, you had a series of social media posts that you did on some of these that you kind of ran for a while as a series. They're pretty popular. So you can go check Jonathan out on LinkedIn and kind of dive into that archive if you want.
Yeah. That was probably last January, February.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these folks came out with new stuff.
Yeah. And it feels good to have some new stuff. I mean, it's you feel a little down, a little stressed, and you go out and you buy some things. I've always said you either try to spend money to get closer to pleasure or further from pain. So that's what's going to be happening. So anyways, well, let's discuss what the brand refresh and what that actually is. So I've got I go by definitions and I read these because I don't want to screw it up. And you guys feel free to say nah, not really. But a brand refresh is simply a sharpening up of your company's message and visuals. And that's in bold, message and visuals. Partly to avoid becoming outdated, but more importantly so, it reflects how your company and your customers are constantly growing and changing. And so that's the definition of a brand refresh.
Mitch approves. Sort of.
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I mean, it makes as much sense as any other definition. I mean, I don't
throw these notes away.
Well, no, stop it. I mean, a brand can refresh for a variety of reasons. I mean, worst case scenario, a brand that goes through a bad spate of PR or something to do with their brand, some event of a negative nature that affects their brand, they'll do a brand refresh because they want to wash away that badness and create something fresh and more positive. A brand can refresh because their look has become stale and dated. You can do a brand refresh because maybe your brand takes its audience has evolved to a point where it needs to speak in a different direction to a different audience.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of different reasons why you might want to do a brand refresh.
Competitiveness.
What's that?
That's the big one to me. You get a new competitor in who starts to take your light. So
Yep.
you gotta refresh and get in front of people in a different, with a different message, different visuals. Just give people something to talk about and give them a reason to latch on to your brand.
Yeah.
And it can be just fast food does this fairly frequently.
Mm-hmm.
They may renew the look of their visual identity, but they don't really change who they are. KFC has done it a few times in the last 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on the previous episode with Coral.
There they are again.
About that. Yeah, there's KFC again. But previous episode you can check out about brand imagery and our brand image and what that is and how that is a mechanism that's very strongly used. I mean, I think of McDonald's. Like, there's a McDonald's on Hurstbourne Lane that for years, and there's one also out in PRP, that is the old design with the roof and it has what I guess was emulating French fries, on the top of it with the yellow, I don't know what to call them, structures.
Arches?
Arches? Well, it wasn't the arches. No, they were
they're
just
like
kind of
straight.
Yeah, they were just like straight, like struts, And that was with the red roof.
Uh-huh.
And that was a kind of a staple design, like physical image design of their stores. And those two were the last standing that I knew of in this area that still did that up until last year. The one on Hurstbourne at 64 finally updated. Now it's completely different looking and more in line with the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
Robert's pulling up images right now. Yeah, you can see there.
Yeah, I actually can remember that. Yeah,
it.
right.
That's it.
There was that one, and then I remember the one where you actually had arches.
Literally never put together that may be fries.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm dumb. I may be wrong. Feel free to leave a comment. Not that I'm dumb,
believe
but
it looks like
maybe I'm wrong.
Now that's the current look.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you don't have the imagery of, where's Ronald?
And see, I don't know if the viewers can see it. The ones on the bottom, every fast food joint that's rolling out a new store is using a very similar look to that.
You know why?
Tell me.
Our favorite other brand, Starbucks.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Seriously. You saw Wendy's, they put fireplaces in the restaurants to get people to come in there and
sit
and hang out and be productive. And
because in the mornings it's mostly, older people because, years ago I used to meet with a mentor and we would meet at the one on Breckenridge in the mornings at like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And that audience, that's where they would go to talk and catch up with each other.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Yep. When I was much, much younger, I worked at McDonald's for about a year. And it was every morning you had that same group of regulars that came in and all they had was coffee.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, who goes to, and of course, this was way back then before Starbucks and coffee shops were on every corner.
Right.
But even then it was like, who goes to McDonald's and just orders coffee?
Well, and they used to have the little rounded seats, right? And the whole point of that was to get people out of there faster. Now they want people to come
Now
in
they want you to linger.
and linger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everything changes, everything evolves, and from your logo, it's not just your logo. Because a lot of times with what we do, and we see this every single time, the logo is sometimes the only thing, and just the thing that people just latch onto when they think of brand. But it's so much more. And so McDonald's is a pretty good example of evolution of a brand.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, at least for the last, I'm guessing, kind of guesstimating, for like the last 20, 30 years, their logo hasn't changed in big ways. They've gently adapted it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
They still use basically similar or very same fonts. And I respect a brand who can hold on to iconography and visuals that are timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've talked about this with prospects and with clients. I don't think you want to be changing a logo a lot because you build equity in the mind of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
They come to know you as a certain thing, and there's a comfort and an ease and a relatability with that. If a company is, having to change their logo and their identity I would even say every 3 to 5 years, I want to know what's going on in that environment that's causing that to have to happen, because you're really rolling the dice in preventing your audience from really latching onto you and becoming comfortable and familiar with you and having that quick recognition.
Yeah. 3 to 5 years is a bit of a different span than 20 when it comes to the logo. Like after 20 years, like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, probably so. There's an admiration to having that kind of brand equity that if you don't have to mess with it a lot and still maintain that kind of that strength of place in the marketplace. It's just that I think that's what brands should continue to aspire to, because it's kind of we live in a very rapidly changing environment, and with social media and stuff's coming at you, you're getting new information thrown at you every 2 seconds, if that.
Well, a rapid change of a logo example would be Instagram. You know, Instagram, when it started out, was the old time kind of Polaroid camera, and it was the logo was made in a way where it looked like, I can't remember the word. Mitch, you might maybe know it, where it's like, looks like the thing, you know. And that was a trend for a while in design. And now what you see now is this, you know, flat icon type of thing, and has been that way.
Well, in social, a lot of their icons have just gone to like a couple of letters.
They all have,
or something. Yeah. They've kind of all fallen in step, and they all kind of look the same.
You know, there's a drawback to that, because a lot of people, in particular on Twitter or with Twitter, they still use the old logo.
Oh yeah,
everywhere. I mean, because all those icon sets got released for websites and things like that.
I think you see that a lot. I think, and it's not just confined necessarily to social media brands. It can be a lot of other brands where there's a comfort people have, and they're so accustomed to and so familiar with a certain logo, they'll continue to throw that out.
I couldn't tell you what the current Twitter logo is, and I use it every day.
I still think
it's a blue bird.
I think it's the bird, and if you turn it upside down, it looks like Batman.
Huh.
Never noticed that before.
Yeah,
I know they have the T as well, which was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
And they've had different birds.
But
so
the Twitter logo is really a fascinating subject, because if it's still that one, you turn it upside down, it looks like Batman. But
on purpose?
No, I don't think it was. No, that was just somebody, I forget who noticed that, but they posted it, and then it just kind of went like wild after that. But it's just all these circles put together, and so I'm a big fan of, obviously, of geometry and things like that, and that's what they did. You know, it wasn't this hand-drawn, artistic, illustrative thing. It was, okay, we have this square, this box to operate within. I know box can be negative sounding to creatives, because it's like, I'm going to put you in a box. That's not what it's for. It's just to help build the construction of the thing, you know, mostly. You got a canvas, you have an art canvas, right? You know, you're not going to go like off the canvas and start painting on your wall and couch. You stay on the canvas. So I guess
unless you have kids.
Yeah, unless you have kids, then that's different. But essentially, that's kind of what they did. Like, here's the boundaries, and then they started using circles, and then out of the circles came the Twitter logo, that logo. So a lot of Google later, in their rules of material design, did the same thing with their icons and everything. They were all based out of geometry and how to build all that, and that was sort of a thing back in, I want to say, 2016. And they issued the standards of that. Like, here's how you do material design with shadowing and just everything, you know, when it came to UI.
It's interesting. You know, we were talking about social media icons and logos and things. And I don't think you can discount, obviously, the influence that Google has had in shaping how these different companies craft their icons. Because if you put, like you said, you put them all on a page now, and they all kind of look like they're part of this, almost part of the same parent brand, and Twitter's not part of Google yet.
Right?
or whatever it's called, Meta. But it's interesting that they're distinct brands, but they all are falling in line and having that same kind of look. It's the digital world, particularly social media, there'll be an interesting study done someday on branding and iconography in social and how it evolved.
Well, even typography, because, I mean, Google's typography has changed. I mean, they came up with the font. I think they came up with the font Roboto. It's a very readable, beautiful font. I love it. It's one of my favorites. And then they use that across a lot of their properties. But now they've come out with the actual Google font, which is what the logo is made of, you know, because the logo's actually been redone. But the colors are the same. You can still use Google's logo to color correct your printer. Seriously, that's what it's actually. It is utilitarian in that way. It's really funny. But you talk,
Just look at that on the screen and look how different.
yeah,
Like on the right side, you see Snapchat versus Snapchat over here.
yeah, the iconography, these icons. I mean,
Which one's right?
yeah.
Becomes that question.
And you can find, like, I know on LinkedIn I've bookmarked it, and Meta actually, when Meta came out, one of the first things they did was here's the logo, here's how to use it. The brand guidelines started. Now, to what you said before, Mitch, the brand guidelines document is a living, breathing document. It evolves, it changes as you go, as you start adding more components to your brand that are out there and assets like video, ads, whatever. Right now, they've started with the logo and its usage, because that's just the first thing everybody starts with. If you go and look up LinkedIn's brand guidelines on their site, because you can do these digitally, they've got obviously a lot more than that. Here's the logo, here's the iconography, here's the color, here's this, and it's a little bit more in depth. And then they have a description of, kind of like what you did with our guidelines and our client guidelines, where it's like, here's the why of this, to kind of explain the story behind it, because that's really important besides the visual. And that kind of gets into what we were talking about today. When you do a brand refresh, you have to include, why did you do it? Otherwise, you're going to do it, and everybody's going to be like, okay, well, that happened.
I think people, they take it more seriously if you make an argument for it.
Well, and in today's, environment, it's immediately hypercritical. It's like if you release something new, people are going to come at it and just try to tear it apart, or say, I liked the old one, bring it back. Every time Facebook made any change for years, people started Facebook pages to protest the changes on Facebook. You know what I mean? So, like, it's kind of just become a cultural thing to, if you don't have strong PR behind it, if you don't explain why you did this or that, people are still going to be critical either way, but at least you get some people on your side, and they're like, well, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's interesting studying the brands, because people gravitate toward brands because they become what? They become comfortable with them. They become comfortable with their identity and what they say and what they mean to them. Mm-hmm. Well, when they start changing things, people naturally become uncomfortable. So wait, this isn't what I came here for. This isn't what I bought this for.
Yeah.
This isn't what I partake of this for.
I think that's especially for, like, what we talked about, like, brands have been around for a long time. Arby's is a good case study of what you're saying. Arby's refreshed its logo, and everybody was like, no. Give me the roast beef sandwich, but don't do that to the logo. Bring back the cowboy hat and all that. Don't try to be clever with the apostrophe, making it a meat slicer, because that's what they did with that. And there's all kinds of things that happened to it. And I remember, so Robert's got an example pulled up. I was just about to say, there was an artist that actually, so there it is right there. It was kind of 3D looking in that trend. But there's also down there on the screen on the other side, there's a shorter hat. And you can see it's shorter in stature compared to the others.
Yeah.
And that was somebody's actual saying, like, why not just do that? It doesn't have to be this tall monstrosity of a hat. Why not just shorten it up, kind of do like what Wendy's did, because Wendy's did a refresh, and they handled it very, very well. And nobody ever said, like, bring the Owen back. You didn't hear any of that because of the way they handled it. So how you handle it is important.
Yeah, like if you're going to change, you better have a good reason for the reasons I outlined a minute ago, and that is because people adopt your brand because it relates to them and they're comfortable.
Yeah,
they become comfortable with it. Well, if you change it, they're no longer comfortable, because it's like, oh wait, this isn't what I originally came here for. This isn't what I liked about it. You're becoming something else, and I'm uncomfortable.
I just spent a bunch of money on your T-shirts and swag, and now all of that's old and doesn't matter.
There's that too. There's that too.
That's what's always kind of amazed me about, like, sports memorabilia and jerseys and stuff. And I'm like, well, you buy all this stuff, and then they're on a different team.
Yeah.
I mean, you still see people walking around with, I don't know, just people who haven't been on the team for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, if the team emblem and everything changes, everybody, I mean, you could say, like, oh, it's nostalgia. They'll just save that, and everybody 20 years from now will go, remember when? Yeah, but that's probably not. I mean, I can look at you, Mitch. I know you're a UK fan, but I remember when everybody threw a fit over the Wildcat, the very first change that I remember happening with the tongue. And I won't go any further than that.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal. A lot of people were like, why are we doing that? Oh, your mind's in a gutter. And it was just like,
Well, I mean, that just goes to show you, and I think that was, I'm trying to think, but that was in the early era of social media, I think is when that first came to light. But that will tell you one voice, one strong outcry on social platforms can have a huge effect on a brand.
Yeah.
And that's not a huge example. I'm trying to, John, maybe you can think of one. I'm trying to think of another example where that's been the case, where there was a hue and cry from a very small group or even an individual about a brand, and it caused a major swing in the brand. I can't think of anything immediate. I know it's happened, but that's just one. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Rush Limbaugh.
Well,
He always had a small group of people coming at him.
well, yeah. Well, yeah.
And
of all the names and
anyways.
things that you bring up, it's like that.
I don't know why I thought of that.
I don't know either.
Well, that's a case of where sometimes your the negative feedback almost creates positive energy for the brand. I mean, some brands can feed off of it that way.
Yeah.
But this was a case, like you said, where there was something inherent about the UK iconography that somebody said, "Hey, that looks like a blank," and somebody said, "Oh, well, maybe we should address that," because then everybody's saying, "Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it?" So
yeah. I mean, it's just sometimes that's what happens.
now it
And,
looks completely different because Nike took over the branding chores. So
Yeah. Well, there you go. Let's talk about some brands that we saw last year that that happens. There's some interesting ones here. So first up is the White House. Now, I didn't say White Castle. I said White House. The White House.
You did just say White Castle.
But I did just say White Castle, but they're not on the list.
we always talk about food brands.
Because, I don't live near a White Castle, and I always have a crave, but, thank goodness I don't live near it, and I have to get to where I'm going to the next appointment because I won't have time to stop in. Otherwise, I'd be there all the time, and then you guys would really hate me in this podcast. Like in this studio would be a bad day. Anyway, the White House.
on.
Yeah,
Good to
moving
know.
on. The White House updated their brand and their look, and so there was quite a bit of change to the appearance of the iconography of the White House.
We're talking about
the
the
color.
the White House seal, like what appears on the podium and what appears behind them during press conferences.
Yeah, it's all over now. I mean, it was done because of the exposure of that. Not to say that it's a brand, but
It is.
honestly, I mean, kind of turned into that in a way, and so they just said, you know what, we ain't updated this, and I don't want to say since 1776, but it's
I don't think it'd been quite that long.
it's updated.
Does it get updated every presidency? Because I was just reading, and Obama updated it, and then Trump did something else, and I don't know what's happened since then.
Oh, well, I know they can redecorate, and they do control what happens in the Oval Office as far as what couch, but I don't know about the logo.
Yeah, I mean, they simplified the visual of the White House itself in the seal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is kind of a trend that everything has kind of gone toward to some degree or another, is a visual simplification.
Robert is on the Googles today, by the
he
way.
is
So
on top of it.
yeah,
You're on top of
Good
it.
thing.
he's gonna love this episode because I'm gonna go down through the list, and he's like, "I got that one here, bang."
Interestingly, I read that Obama dropped the White House from the logo. That was his change.
He
Yeah.
just used just the White
Just
House
the
itself,
iconog,
which
Yeah.
is interesting because it's, for Americans particularly, it's self-evident.
Recognizable,
Yeah, it's
right.
self-evident,
Yeah. Well, it says the White House, Washington, underneath
as in the
it.
White House, as opposed to the White House in Des Moines.
Yeah. Well, the iconography is really close to what you would probably see with an old plantation in Georgia, frankly. So I could imagine we might want to put the name under it.
Yeah, maybe.
You don't immediately because you got to think when you look at something intently, you're kind of going, okay, I see what it is. But if you kind of glance, that's not how to think about it. You got to glance at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you
I probably wouldn't know it if it didn't.
Right.
If I didn't know, that doesn't look that familiar.
And this could be a case where each administration kind of coming in and kind of wanted to put their own thumbprint on things, regardless of whether or not the world at large
It's
is
just
going
a
to
clean
notice.
slate,
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you were just saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of just all right.
But it's always blue.
That guy's gone.
It's always blue because
Now it's our turn.
there are standards. There are brand standards for it. So blue is a standard. Now the shade of blue changes. Even Coca-Cola. See, worked it in.
There they are.
They changed the shade of their red. Robert, you don't have to Google Coca-Cola. He's going to anyway.
Can't do it.
He's curious.
He's curious.
It's okay.
But, they changed the shade of their red, just a slight. You'd have to really put them side by side to kind of pick up on it. But I don't think you'll ever see the White House logo with red. It's just it's gonna be blue because there is color theory, right? Blue's trustworthy. You feel trust with blue. Green is rebirth.
Although I think when Coke chose red, they probably weren't thinking of any of those things.
No, I think it was just easy because red was an abundant paint. They were putting it on barns, and they were probably like that.
Well, and it's a. I mean,
out.
sometimes the simple answer is the best answer. I mean, red is just a very bright visual color. You notice it very quickly.
There's a brand here in town that I know the story of how they came about, and it wasn't really thought out very well, but it's a popular company. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to
say it. I'm just kidding. You don't have to.
No, I don't want to.
Do it.
But I'll tell y'all later after the show the story because it's just really kind of in a funny way. It's not dumb, but to me, it's just just that kind of a mentality with it. I just kind of laugh because it really wasn't like you said. It was sometimes the simplest thing is the answer, and so that's kind of what happened with them.
Not to take off any designers out there or anything, but my first instinct generally goes that way. It's like, find the simplest answer to something. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be. Our job is hard enough sometimes.
Yeah. Especially when it gets to John, like the last episode, John was like, I need to sleep. Help. Yeah. All right. The next one on the list was the CIA. So, yeah.
I really didn't even, I mean, I guess I sort of assumed they had a logo, but I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought until this happened.
They don't want you to. That's the point.
We did our logo. Can I see it? No.
Yeah, we were never here.
Top secret.
Yeah, but they did.
Right.
Major change to it.
And I'm saying. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Be careful where you say that.
They're just yeah.
Mitch was just kidding.
Mitch was joking. It's good. It's fine. We all like it. Now, I don't know,
No, we don't.
I don't.
If that gets small.
Mitch, you're not helping.
If that gets small, every one of those little lines is going to close up.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what they're for. For those listening on the audio version, we're critiquing the logos. You can go to YouTube and Google NerdBrand and check out the video version of this. We'll try to include these, or at least a link in the description so that you can check them out.
Yeah.
But the lines that Mitch is talking about is they are just I don't know. Are they supposed to?
I think
represent the internet. I don't know.
If you watch a Jason Bourne movie or something, a spy thriller or something like that.
Yeah.
And they use either night vision goggles or some kind of visual tool that shows the topography of the land.
You know what I think it is? Aliens.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
UFOs.
Aliens. It's UFOs.
Yeah,
it is.
It's aliens.
Even
it's stealthy looking.
Even being what it is, it's better than the old logo.
Yeah,
that's really outdated.
Well, it's a seal. I mean,
well, yeah.
Well, what's the starburst for?
No,
it's
maybe a compass.
Generally, you that's like the icon you'd see on a map that shows north, south, shows direction.
Yeah, direction.
What's that have to do with them?
They're always I think it's because they are always looking in every direction. Because you'll note they've got north, northwest, west,
northwest,
southwest, south.
There's a lot of
southeast,
points.
I would just
east.
assume that they're cartographers.
Yeah, well, Moving on. The next one is Burger King. They updated.
What's old is new again.
That's another place. If you drive by and you smell them, you just have to go buy one. So Whoppers.
Yeah, there's a distinct smell of that broiler smoke coming out of their buildings.
Yeah, again, that goes back to a previous episode we talked about with experience. With that's part of it. But Burger King modernized their stuff, made it much simpler. It used to be the icon that was on a tilt with a blue circle something around it, and
which had evolved from the look somewhat that they currently have. They kind of took they took that previous look and just kind of
throwback,
polish it over a little bit. And
good job there, Robert. Dang, man. Yeah, you found that. There's a whole article about Burger King and the throwback logo and the whole psychology about it. So from 1994. God, I remember that year. That's the year I graduated high school.
I was 4.
Shut up, John.
I'm not going to say how old I was.
They, the logic of the rebrand, not to be overly critical, but it was to kind of throw back to unprocessed foods, healthier ingredients, things like that. More simple.
That's probably.
And I'm like,
that's not what was going on in '94. Yeah, it's fast food. Yeah.
Well,
I don't go there for the health.
To their credit, that logo from the 2000 era is a lot to look at. to me there's really almost too much going on in there.
I've always wondered where the burger is going.
It's outside the bun.
They really, and they honestly, they downplay the burger shape in it.
Mm-hmm.
And also you'll notice there's like those little sheen marks on the top and bottom button. Has anybody ever gotten a burger that had a really shiny bun?
Well, and
As a matter of fact, I have from Wendy's. They have shiny buns.
Well, Wendy's has shiny buns.
it's called butter.
No,
Maybe.
it's called brioche.
Oh,
Maybe.
Wendy's uses those brioche buns, which it's kind of a characteristic.
I don't like them.
Off topic,
liar.
brioche, it has that kind of shiny shell, outer shell to the bun, which everybody started making a big deal about, and I'm like, why?
You know, I'm getting to the point where it's like I'm happy with a Whopper, but Mitch, it's like, no, I want Grey Poupon and brioche.
I only pointed out what kind of bun it was. That's all I was. I don't particularly like brioche.
Mitch is more Mitch, I get it. You're classier than us. Move on.
I love Burger King.
I always just assumed it was some weird thing they sprayed on there to keep it good longer.
Nope,
know?
that's just
know,
that's just a characteristic of brioche bread.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory boiling up there.
Well, maybe.
You know,
They spray produce and
What's that line from Christmas Vacation? It's a non-nutritive food varnish.
Wow, that's obscure. Way to go. All right, next up, Pfizer. Pfizer is always in the news thanks to COVID and everything and their vaccine and
all the things.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a corporate. It's a big corporate brand. That
Huge brand.
You're not going to walk into. I went to Pfizer and bought a shoe. You're not going to do that. But they thought and sat around and said, probably we're in the news a lot. Maybe we should update our stuff, and they did. I'm not sure what to make of what the story is behind it. It's not like the first time they've done it, but it was interesting. Yeah, cool. They revised the color palette, everything with it. The last revision was 2009.
Yeah, and what's interesting is
1849. They started in 1849.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful logo.
Wow,
it's not bad. I didn't particularly not like the previous one. It's got a little more going on, which I tend to like more. I lean toward, depending on the brand, more.
I wonder if that icon there is like DNA.
That's what it says.
Is that what it says? Oh,
from a circle to ovals to DNA.
It might be a guess though.
Yeah. So Jason should read more when examples are brought up on the screen.
You also get a little in the negative space. You get a little bit of a feel of the P shape.
Oh, you do.
What's interesting to me is if you look at it, because of the direction of that upper curve, it almost takes you away from the logo visually instead of taking you toward it, which I wouldn't have. Well, I understand they're trying to get that P element more, kind of.
I would drop the P if I was them. Because why are you putting so much emphasis on the F?
Because it's pronounced Pfizer.
Just get rid of the P.
Because, well, I think Mr. Pfizer probably.
Where's he at?
In that one snippet right there, you got here is the actual technical thought process of creating a logo.
I do.
The logo goes in a direction to take your eye away from that. That's very insightful, Mitch. And then John comes in and goes just drop the P.
Who needs it? More people would talk if he dropped the P.
Why is Philip spelled with a P?
What's funny, for some reason,
sense a little bit. There's no H here.
I think there's still some Mr. and Mrs. Pfizer's involved.
Well,
they might take umbrage.
Money.
They might take umbrage.
All right.
Anyways, moving on.
And
I like it.
And to say this, it also adds a kind of unique characteristic to their brand by being that PF.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I guess.
All right.
I appreciate the vaccine, guys.
We do. I'm loaded up even with the booster. So all good.
Loaded up.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I don't know how. Yeah, I know. It's like, I got it. Hurt my arm. Only a couple days, but we're not getting into that convo.
This is not a reflection on the Pfizer brand.
No, it's not.
Where's Joe Rogan?
Yeah, I know, right? I ate some cereal bars. Paramount Studios. Let's go with Paramount. Paramount's next with, and they went Paramount Plus. John, a while back, you was like,
is that a refresh or just a new brand?
I don't really know. It's kind of confusing at the moment because.
That's just their streaming.
Yeah, it is their streaming platform.
One of them.
Yeah.
Because there's a Paramount Network.
Yeah.
And there's Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
It's a little confusing.
It
Is
is.
Viacom part of that?
Viacom owns they're like the parent.
Well, that would explain the
company and-
confusion.
Yeah. But yeah, so you've got and you got CBS underneath that as well. So, but the logo of Paramount, it's like the mountain, the stars, but then they slapped a plus on it. So then you're like, wait, is this Paramount Pluses or is this Paramount? And that's why I put on the list, because I'm like, this is an example of, which is it? So, but yeah, they had a refresh, brand,
Had
whatever.
a lot.
Yeah.
But they've still maintained those core elements, which I think is cool. I mean,
Yeah.
they've managed to hold on to the core elements because, again, brand equity.
Well, the
brand
stars have to
recognition.
stay because I think, the stars have meaning, and that's the original number of, I think, SAG founders in Hollywood years ago. Maybe something. There's some story, something like that behind it. Yeah, believe it or not. You know what, Mitch? Don't look at me like that. I do my homework.
No, I'm just no. I just find it interesting that a studio would kind of adopt as part of their legacy the Screen Actors Guild.
Well, they've been around since its inception. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of makes.
Well, you look at the original logo from 1914,
yeah, I mean,
and it
literally,
looks nothing.
they've been around since movies were a thing. So
It was a crown.
Yeah, they can totally get away with that if they want. But yeah, there's some sort of story that's related or tied to that somehow. I remember seeing that running across it. So, but again, it's now it's Paramount Plus. What's the plus? It's like if we did NerdBrand Plus, what would be the plus? We covered it, like John, you said the other, in an episode that, okay, it's hard enough to make the original content. Now you got to upscale yourself, overdo, raise the bar. And now you got, okay, what do I?
It's a brand extension.
Yeah. Well, that's clear, but still.
It's Paramount and more.
Plus.
It's a
Plus, right? Exactly.
plus.
That's what they're alluding to. It's everything you like about Paramount
Edition.
and a lot of other stuff.
We should do NerdBrand Edition. Not Plus.
We have a way at NerdBrand to do things differently for a reason. That's because everybody else is always doing something else anyway.
Because we think we're funny.
Well,
We think we're clever.
Internally.
Well, sometimes I can be a troll. I'll admit it, and that's what I'm doing. That's why you see stuff, and you're like, "Why'd you do that?" It's like so I can laugh, and when you ask me why, I can go.
Don't ever laugh like that again.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know you had that in you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Next up on the list, Adobe Creative Cloud. It's just Adobe CC. They've had a lot of iterations. This is goes back to what you said about a logo changing and evolving. I think for each individual piece of subscription software, whether if it's Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign, every year it's new.
Right.
And it changes, but this is the umbrella.
Technically, it changes more than every year. I mean, it changes every other week.
Yeah. So now it's kind of gotten rainbowy, and it's kind of went away from just the red and the cloud. Of course, obviously, because it's Creative Cloud,
Which is kind of, it's interesting, the multicolor element of the CC logo, in that because they're a creative, they represent a whole set of creative tools that is about being, having like a whole universe of color and tone and design application. So
right?
it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next one then. Warner Brothers, one of my favorites. They had an update.
Minimalist, like everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
Boiling it down, simplifying.
Yeah. I know Mitch and I have had strong feelings about DC and their logo and everything else, but Warner Brothers themselves, who is parent company of that, they updated and it became a very it's just blue, it's flat. There's no depth to it.
It's almost new old, because in some ways, if you
Right.
go back to their very, very old Shield logo, it really is a lot more like that than previous iterations.
Yeah. So thank you, Robert, for bringing that up. 1929, it kind of leans back into that.
Except for the typography.
Yeah, so you can start to see a pattern that in 2019, everything is when that came out, and in early 2020, everybody started leaning into nostalgia with their iconography.
That one from 1972, I mean, that's just 70s all over the place.
Yeah. That
It lasted 12 years.
it did. Yeah.
I would have gave it a year.
Yeah, it's funny
That makes
how
no sense.
if you look at 1948, if you look up the Warner Brother logo in 1948 and you look at 1984, do you see what I see in that list? Just swap the 4 and the 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
That was probably
similar.
on purpose. So
Well, again, I mean, it's one of those legacy brands where there's such, there's so much heritage and so much equity in that, and what the expectations people have of the brand. The kind of value of carrying certain things along with you as you go. Of course, the older your brand gets, the more more generations, I guess, you have in your audience, the easier it is to kind of develop outward.
Yeah. So this one here, we're not, and by the way, just kind of a side note, this is not an episode bashing any of these. It's just having a little fun.
We can.
But no, we don't want to, we're not bashing anybody. We're not doing any of that. We don't want any hate mail. That's not what all this is about, but it's just very interesting.
I think it is fair to debate decision-making sometimes.
Yeah. But it is very interesting. Yeah. Cause I know, Mitch, you see the next one on the list and you're like, I've got something to
Just
say.
be careful.
I have some questions.
Yeah, I really don't. I kind of look at it and go like, you know what? I like the pizza and I like the
And in the end,
garlic butter.
that's what matters.
There's your first problem.
Yeah, that's probably in a lot of ways. Make sure you keep the camera angles up. I don't want people to see me like falling out of my shorts.
What?
Pizza makes you fat.
He's wearing shorts.
Gotcha. Good clarification.
Thank you. But Papa John's is now without the apostrophe to emphasize. Mitch, here you go.
Well,
there's an interesting.
You're teed up.
Yeah. The way I hear it is they got rid of the apostrophe. This is the story, and they're sticking to it.
Is it actually a press release they made about it?
Papa John's belongs to everyone. So it's no longer possessive.
That's beautiful.
My take is Papa John's doesn't belong to John anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
So we got to get rid of that apostrophe, folks, because it don't belong to him no more.
Yeah.
So the way they're rolling it out is it's everyone's.
Yeah. Well, and the logo, I mean, they got rid of the border around it, I think. And they did.
I just think they could have paid somebody to come up with something better.
They kept the better ingredients, better pizza, which I remember. This is back in the 90s, a debate between them and Pizza Hut.
Oh yeah,
the whole fight over that.
They went to court.
Yeah, they literally went to court over like, that's not true. It comes out of a can like everybody else's, and I'm like, we know that, but we still buy it.
Well, no. Here's the thing, and this comes from an inside source at Papa John's. That was a brand promise that was true about them, was the way they approached the acquisition, the production, and the distribution of their products. The quality of the dough, the timing on what was made, that it was fresh, that the type of tomatoes they were used were actually chosen specifically for their sauce, their recipe. All those things were real. Those were part of the company's DNA, part of the brand's DNA. And it was something that they really hung their hat on. And I can understand why you'd want to stick to that, because even if people know they're eating something that's not good for them, they at least consumers take comfort in, well, it's not full of manufactured, man-made.
It's not that bad for me.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I only have to run 62 miles to work it off. Instead of 70.
It's not full of artificial things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love pizza.
I do too.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes go back and forth between Papa John's and Pizza Hut. I used to, when I was younger, I liked pan pizza from Pizza Hut, but now I don't. I don't care for that at all. I just like the regular.
Domino's is they're pan pizza. You can try that out.
Tell you what,
every time I try it out, I think I catch them.
It's a learning lesson.
I think I catch them on that curve where they're like, let's try this recipe, see if people like it. And that's when I jump in, and it's not the right time to do that.
Well, not to get off topic, but it used to be the beauty of getting a pan pizza at Pizza Hut was you went to a Pizza Hut location and sat down in a booth.
Yeah.
And they brought it to you in the pan. And it was
it's good.
It was incredible. Now you're having it generally delivered. There's the time lapse between the time it's made and it arrives. Yeah. It's not in that hot pan. It's just not. You're right. It's not the same.
It's a little greasy.
Yeah.
I will tell you.
Yeah.
By the way, who's that other? There's a new pizza, the Detroit style pizza, Jets.
Jets is good.
More and more people are coming and saying, you got to try this. This is amazing.
I have always
pizza.
been impressed with Little Caesars and the ability to kind of go in and their pizzas are made and they're there and you take them home and you can still gorge on, an entire pizza, whether, because
Impressed in Little Caesars, or I'll eat it, but those are not two
I was gonna
words I
say,
would use to.
I'll eat frozen pizza. Okay. But on that,
I love Little Caesars, but I would consider it like an emergency.
when you don't have any pizza in the freezer, you got to have pizza. You got to have it now, and you don't
apparently
have a
my
lot of money.
standards are not very
It's
high.
not much worse than Papa John's.
Yeah.
If we're just being honest here.
Yeah, a night out for me is like, oh, I got a DiGiorno in the fridge. Come on.
Anyways, back on topic.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they went with a flat design.
It's
too.
it's flat,
Yes, it
which
is.
is
Burger
the
King, McDonald's, they're all doing it.
well, and that the Warner Brothers logo we just looked at is very flat.
Yeah.
But to me, it has very little iconic character to it,
Yeah, well, it's easier to print. It's probably easier to use on cross platforms, mediums, whatever you want to call
and
it.
I think it's harder to read.
Well, they did bring the better ingredients forward though, because it's not on the old logo.
Nope. So
Yeah,
that
I don't mind that.
yeah. So that's like I said. That's why I pointed it out. It's like that's back.
I just to be really crass, somebody got paid a whole lot of money to do that, and I'm not impressed.
I don't know if you're thinking like, oh, this agency got it. I don't think that. They got a pretty strong internal, marketing.
They paid
team,
somebody
so-
outside to do that.
You think so?
They,
Oh yes.
I bet they had to put the tagline back in because somebody said we're going to drop the border in the pizza, so now people don't know what we do, so we're going to put the tagline.
You're
That's
right.
that's
Maybe.
interesting.
They
Yeah.
needed to have something to come back to say pizza because it's like Domino's doesn't say pizza anymore, it's just Domino's because they do more than pizza now. We talked about that on previous episodes where they've shifted to like, you want a sandwich? Okay, go to Domino's. And people are like, what? And they had to change the store's appearance, the logo, and everything in order to fall in line with that. And that was something that was a bold move because, you can get lasagnas, you can get all kinds of things. Now, Papa John's, I don't think they'll go that route because I think that would be a mistake for their brand position. But
They know what their core.
yeah.
They know what their core
I
audience
guess
is.
I've
They know
said
what their
before,
core
it'd be like
product is.
KFC selling fish sandwiches. It just doesn't make sense. So
They did.
Boy,
They
I don't
updated
know.
their whole store though too. Like I don't know if we have any pictures of that Papa John's. They updated the whole kind of experience, which was to me needed. I mean, their stores kind of feel outdated.
Yeah.
compared to others.
Yeah, well, in COVID-19, I mean, do you really need to go inside? You can
Right.
just drive up now, and that's the better thing. So it's sort of
We're losing experiences.
we are, but it's not like there's a
You have to
evil
be at home
master
all the time.
Yeah,
I don't want to be at home. I'm discovering I don't think I want to be at home all the time.
They
well,
definitely modernized.
obviously, but it's not like there's this evil mastermind doing it. It's not like Thanos came down and said COVID, but it just is a evolution, a thing that has to happen in our culture, society for the moment until we are able to conquer this thing.
I do think I gotta go. All these locations, all these different brands have boxes. Their buildings are all boxes.
Well, it's easier to and the thing behind that is that the materials are easier to get. It's easier to construct. It's cheaper.
Right. Very modular.
There is there's a reason for that. There's a hotel down in San Antonio that if you go through down the river, you see these big, huge cedar trees and everything. And there's this hotel, and the hotel was like built within like a couple of weeks because it's all modular things like Legos.
San Antonio is a great town, by the way.
Yeah, and so but it's a huge place and it's a really nice place to stay. I assume I didn't stay there because I just drove down from Austin to go there, and it's just fascinating to see like the construction is. Because it's more efficient,
Right.
you are going
get
to
it.
lose that aesthetic of,
There's a medium. I mean, there's a middle ground I think that can be had.
yeah. And I think that will come back as
And again-
the supply chain gets fixed.
But these are things that again we're talking about branding is what we're talking about. These
Isn't
are
that interesting how this podcast actually sounds a little bit serious every now and then if you just keep listening?
The more I shut up, the more serious.
That's not true. We're all pretty goofy. It is interesting, but all of these, what we're showcasing here, though, is that it's not just your logo that speaks about your brand. It's your locations, it's your storefronts, it's your signage, it's their colors. All those things have to come together and be thought through in a singular direction so that people can interpret your brand in the way you want them to interpret it.
Yeah, no, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like applying a strategy to the brand.
But it's just funny, though. It's just funny, though, that in this how everything's starting to look so similar and stand out in fewer ways
Yeah.
to me,
Well-
except color.
Yeah. Well, the last on the list is GM. GM has always been a brand, has always been a car that and a company that I've looked at just because of that legacy for me. So they changed their logo, and I saw it, and I didn't really think about it. But the meaning, I think, behind that was because of the electric car movement, for the EV. And I was just kind of like, it just didn't cross my mind because I just cannot see, and you and Mitch and you and I have talked about the new Corvettes,
Gorgeous.
I don't particularly like them, to be honest with you. It just doesn't look like a Corvette anymore.
True. The look has definitely evolved.
Yeah. So GM, and everything they do from their brand, even the cars they produce now, I don't feel like it has any tie to that legacy to me. For me,
Well, if you look at the history of their logo is very, I don't want to say generic, but it's very basic, very simple.
it
kind
looks
of
like a Photoshop logo. Like I'm going to buy a subscription to Greater Math or something, for like helping me with
I
something.
always thought it was a nice PowerPoint gradient.
You're talking about the one from 2000 to 2010.
Just the bottom three are all like PowerPoint templates.
But the general icon itself, it's very basic because you have to remember at the time, especially and now, back then they had how many nameplates
Yeah.
fell under that family of brands. It was really
Yeah.
a family of brands and not a brand in and of
Well,
itself.
I mean, over the years too. I mean, Pontiac went away. Buick has endured because it's sort of that.
Well, they got
old,
they got rid of Pontiac and they got rid of Oldsmobile, which to
Yeah.
me was like Buick, only different. Of course,
Yeah.
so was Pontiac. They were all basically the same car. Let's just slap a different grill
Yeah.
and different headlight
because
configuration.
save
on it.
money on production. Yeah. Buick has endured, Cadillac, obviously Corvette. But Chevrolet is still.
Yeah, they basically eliminated the brands that kind of.
And I know Corvette's part of Chevy, but still.
They eliminated the brands that sort of spoke to the same audience because the Oldsmobile audience and the Buick audience were essentially the same audience. Chevy is the basic blue collar brand.
Yeah, Chevy's bow tie logo was when it came out was all about upscale car to take out on the night on the town. That's what that emblem is. It's a bow tie.
Yeah, but now it's more blue collar, more working man.
Yeah, it's competing more with Ford, where it's like let's haul some dirt and stuff.
I was surprised. I was surprised when they got rid of Pontiac because to me Pontiac was the performance, sort of the performance brand.
There's also Knight Rider.
Yeah, well, yeah, because Pontiac had the Firebird, the Le Mans, the more performance.
Just phew, John just is like, God,
I'm just
stop.
not. I'm not entertaining you anymore. Mitch, finish your thought.
No,
Sorry.
it was an icon that really represented a family of brands, and it's just interesting how the ones that
family
got
has
rid of.
dissolved.
Yeah, it's more. They've whittled it down a bit. You've got the luxury brand, which is Cadillac, the blue collar brand, which is Chevy, and the more businessman, I guess, business person brand, which is Buick.
Yeah.
Who am I missing? Is there anybody else? Are they three now?
Corvette is like a part of
Chevy, Buick.
Corvette's a part of Chevy, but that's like midlife crisis, maybe. I don't know.
Corvette, really what they've done with Corvette is almost made it its own thing.
It is, yeah. I mean, they only produce somewhere around 40,000 units a year, so they're not.
It's like a novelty.
Yeah, and that's just kind of how that goes. But I mean, GM has really cut back on the brands they own, but there are some they do own. Like, Robert's pulling up again. Very strong Google. The force is strong with you, sir, with the Googles.
Yeah, but the new GM, they didn't have to go over the top to really adapt the logo. The changes aren't huge. They're simple changes though, but it really does move the look forward. It does look much more.
That's the other one,
right?
Yeah, GMC.
Which is all trucks.
Yeah, GMC was always that brand that they have that's like, but that is GM, and it's not. But it's like, well, wait a minute, what? Huh? So
yeah, then you got
GM
GMC.
Financial.
Yeah.
Come buy the car and we'll finance it for you too.
That's a trend. That's a thing. Like, that's very interesting that you have GM Financial, because I knew that out there was some sort of talk about them doing software or something. Because Sony, as a company, we've talked about them and how they've evolved over the years. Like, obviously, we know them for movies and Spider-Man and all that, but they also are in banking and financial as well. That's their big thing. Of course, back in the day, it was cameras and, all
Electronics.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting to kind of see that, to go into banking. I'm kind of curious if there's any car manufacturers out there like, oh yeah, we're making drugs, the legal kind. But it's just to be interesting to see who's jumping into pharmaceuticals.
Well, I mean, it's
I'm
kind
sure
of
they all are.
Oh, I bet they are too.
lots of big Japanese corporations though are they're multi-fat. Yamaha.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, musical instruments and lots of different kinds of motor vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
industrial equipment. I mean, Japanese companies by nature, these big Japanese corporations tend to be very diverse.
That's going to conclude our list for the new year, new brand. Some of those folks that have done it over the past 2 years. Looking forward to kind of seeing what's going to happen in 2022. It's really hard to say that in one breath, just to be honest with you, after the last 2 years. But you can check us out at nerdbrandagency.com/podcast to listen to this latest episode or watch it. We do post the new videos for these podcasts on that webpage every Friday around 8 to 11 a.m. Just hit refresh until you see it. I promise it'll be there. And then the audio version usually goes up around 11 a.m. Robert, stop laughing at me. It's just like, Jesus. This
For
is a mess.
those who
Is anybody in charge here?
for those where timing is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Just sit at your computer for 2 hours and just keep it
Yeah.
refreshed.
Keep it
Yeah, just
refresh.
keep hitting refresh. Yeah, in between. Yeah, so
Where's the podcast?
I would do that with like maybe the latest Hawkeye episode, but I don't think anybody's doing that with this podcast. Anyways,
I do it every Friday.
Podcast goes out at promptly 8 a.m.
Yeah.
on all
thank you,
podcast
sir.
platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, anyways, thank you for listening and tuning in. Check us out also on the socials everywhere at NerdBrand Agency for that handle, and leave a like, subscribe, comment. Mitch is still saying he wants you to participate. And
Leave questions, topics that you haven't heard discussed that you'd like to hear discussed. We'd love to get some feedback from you guys.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to close out the show, be done, and we'll see you next week. Keep your NerdBrand strong.